Hi, I'm Susie, and I design and press cookie press discs. We have more than 250 shapes and over 30 themes, designed and manufactured right here in the United States by our small family-owned company. Now you might be thinking that a cookie press is just for Christmas and Christmas trees, but I want you to think again, because I'm going to show you how to get creative with your cookie press all year long. Hi again from sunny Colorado. I want to wish you all a very happy spring. I am very excited that it's spring because that happens to be my favorite season. And in my favorite season is my favorite holiday, which is Easter. So it's appropriate that today I'm showing you guys how to make cream cheese Easter Spritz cookies decorated with a buttercream frosting. We're going to be using the chick and egg, the carrot and bunny from our Easter disc set. And we're going to be tinting the dough yellow for the chick, orange for the carrot, and a little bit of brown for the bunnies to make them look like cute little wild bunnies. And we're going to leave the eggs plain and then decorate those with tinted frosting. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first step in making this really yummy cream cheese Spritz recipe is to cream together our 1 cup of butter and 3 ounces of cream cheese. And I admit I am a bit of a broken record about this, but the key to every great Spritz recipe is to cream the butter really, really well. And in this case, it's going to be butter and cream cheese. So take your electric mixer, set it on a really high setting, and pretend that you're making frosting and give it a good whip. You'll notice that your butter will change from the yellow it comes out of the fridge with to a slightly lighter color, which isn't quite as obvious when you've got cream cheese involved, but if it has some nice little peaks and it's nice and smooth, you'll have done it right. This is looking pretty good. I'm going to tip up my bowl here and show you in the close-up camera what I mean about those nice little peaks. So when you get peaks like that and it all looks very smooth, you've done a good job of getting your butter ready for your other ingredients. So the next ingredient is to add our sugar. In this case, it's going to be 1 cup of regular granulated sugar. I'm just going to pour it in all at once. We don't have to be too picky about this. And you want to cream it again and give it a good whip, because creaming the butter and sugar together is really what the foundation is for these kinds of recipes. Even though I'm using granulated sugar instead of powdered sugar like you would in frosting, this really whipped up nicely and has a wonderful, really good texture. I almost want to stick my finger in there right now. So the next thing we want to do is add our wet ingredients, which for this recipe is simply vanilla and 1 egg. I've got a terrific looking foundation here, nice and fluffy, smells really good. So now we're just going to add our last ingredient, which is actually combined. I've got my flour and baking powder and salt in here, and in it goes. Add your flour a little bit at a time, and you don't want to cream it again, you don't want to whip it again, you just want to incorporate it until everything is nice and evenly combined. Looks like I've got everything incorporated nice and evenly. So what I'm going to do now is reach into the bowl and I'm going to grab some of this dough and show it to you in the close-up camera, because I want you to show what the correct texture of a good Spritz recipe looks like. It's going to have a feel kind of like a soft Play-Doh, and you want to make sure that your dough breaks apart nicely in your hands, because what it's supposed to be doing is extruding out of the cookie press, and then when you pull up the press, it's going to leave the shapes behind. So these nice clean little breaks are what you're looking for. It should be soft and malleable in your hands without being sticky. See, it's not sticking to my hands, but it's not really, really difficult to work with. It's not terribly stiff. I always point out that you can troubleshoot a Spritz recipe very easily by adding a tablespoon of flour at a time if your dough is too soft or sticky and it just feels too mushy, like it's not going to hold its shape well. Or if you can add a tablespoon at a time of water, or even vanilla if you wanted to add a little extra flavor, to dough that's overly stiff, because things like temperature, humidity, how accurately you measured, things like that can really affect the way your dough is. But this looks pretty good, so what I'm going to do is clean up a little bit, and I'm going to get our food colorings and we'll get to dyeing the dough. With the dough all made, I separated it out into 4 bowls. The largest amount I kept aside is just going to be left plain, and that's for the Easter eggs, because we don't need to tint that dough because we're going to be giving them their pizzazz with the buttercream icing. The other 3 are to do orange and yellow and brown for the carrots, chicks, and bunnies. So I just want to go ahead and color one of them for you and demonstrate how to work the color in. So let's just pick one. and I'm going to maybe start with the yellow and get it ready for those chicks. So what you want to do is use a gel food coloring, never a liquid, because liquid is going to change the consistency of your dough too much, just like adding more water would do. But a gel won't do that. So use a gel, and I'm just going to take a couple of toothpicks full, just going to reach into my hole here, open that a little more, and just grab some globs of this. And I'm going to kind of drip it on here, you can see what I'm doing, and just poke it into the dough. And then I'll start working it with a spoon, and I'll just keep adding it until I have Mr. Bear hold those. Definitely have a place to put your toothpicks because this can get really messy. But I'm going to start working it in with a spoon just so that it doesn't end up all over my hands and staining my hands. But you really can work this with your hands without getting too colored up. But I like to start with a spoon. Once I've got it so that the liquid isn't just sitting on the surface of the bowl, that's when I go ahead and start using my hands and just kind of knead the color in. It's a great technique for getting color in, because who wants to use the mixer and have to keep cleaning the beaters, which I already have to clean my beaters to make the buttercream frosting soon, so I figure it's just easier to do this with my hands. Just squish it in and just keep kneading it until the color is evenly distributed. With my last few kneads and squeezes here, I think I've got everything incorporated pretty nicely. Show you in the close-up camera. It's still very breakable. So I've got what's going to look like some really cute chicks. So that's all there is to tinting the dough, is just to add it in, but remember to start a little bit at a time because you can always add more, but you can't take it out. I'm going to finish up coloring my other 2 bowls of dough, and then we'll get right to pressing. With the dough all tinted, it's time to get to pressing. My favorite way to pack the barrel of a cookie press is to use a spoon, and I'm going to start with the orange, and we'll make our carrots first, and to just take globs of the dough and drop it on in here and pack it in with the back of a spoon. Because, whoa, unless I'm dropping it. Because if you pack it in with the back of a spoon, kind of like this. Let's see if I can show this to you. What you want to do is squish it all together so that you're eliminating air bubbles. Those air bubbles are going to cause you problems because it'll make your dough sit unevenly in here. So if it's packed in tight on one side and packed in loose on the other, you're going to end up with shapes that come out misshapen. They're going to be bigger on one side than the other, or they're going to be missing pieces, or some of the smaller pieces, because there just isn't enough pressure to get one side of the design out. With the barrel packed, it's just a matter of putting in your disc, and our discs can go either direction, so there isn't a right or wrong, although some of the designs, like the chick and the bunny, you can have them facing different directions, so sometimes it's fun to do some one way and some the other, but the carrot, it's going to look the same whichever way you do it. So just drop it on into the ring, and screw it on, and let's get to pressing. The first thing I always say to do is to click or twist, whatever kind of press you have, a little bit into the air first to set your presser. And if this much comes out, you might want to wipe it away. But if just a little bit came out, that's okay to leave it there. Because what you're trying to do is set that pressure so that it's nice and even, and when you depress the plunger, it's really going to push the dough out and not be busy pressing out air bubbles. So let's see what happens. And the other thing I say is, the first couple of cookies very often come out really junky and misshapen and end up back in the bowl because the pressure's not set. So let's see what we get here. Looks like a carrot to me. The carrot's a nice, tight, tiny little design, so you don't want to press them too big. So if it takes less than a click, that's just fine. That one didn't take a full click, and I finished the click there. So if you have a 1 click per cookie type press, this one lost a couple pieces, so I'm just going to toss it back in the bowl. Always think of it as just a dough pump. It's just a way to get cookie dough onto the sheet. So if it takes more than a click, less than a click, click and a half, click and a tap, that's just fine. Because all you're really trying to do is just use it as a way to get it out there. And the more that you press, the better you'll get at feeling the dough sticking to the pan. If it starts to push back on you, you know your design is sticking. And if you just feel like nothing's coming out, you probably need to apply a little more pressure. My carrots are looking pretty good. I'm going to show them to you in the close-up camera here. There we go. Got a bunch of nice looking carrots. Pretty good tight design. And they all came out looking pretty well. I threw back the one that really didn't. But again, you don't want these to spread out too much because they're going to spread a bit in baking anyway. I'm going to finish out this pan, and then I'm going to show you how some of the other designs press too. I changed my mind about finishing the entire pan in carrots because to save time and space, why not show a bunch more on this pan too? So I emptied out the rest of my orange dough and loaded in some yellow. So now I've got my chick. I'm going to plop her on in here, screw on the ring, set the pressure and see how they come out. Now this is the kind of design that has little features to it. That is a really fat little chick. It's got, that one is too. It's got little feet and a little beak, so you don't want them to come out the way my first few came out. See, that one took a click and a tap. You want them to come out like these are coming out. Oh, that one's missing pieces. So that goes to show that there's a happy medium between a really big fat chick that isn't holding its shape and a little skinny chick that lost its feet. So I'll hold this up and show you exactly what I mean by that. Most of these came out perfectly fine with beaks and feet intact, but the first couple came out way too big. So let me get up here in the close-up camera and show you what I mean. These guys over here, they don't have a whole lot of definition. You can't really make out, it's just kind of a big fuzzy blob, whereas the others are going to bake up really nice and tight and look really cute. So I'm going to get rid of these first couple and just toss them back in the bowl. That's what you do with Spritz cookies. If you don't like the way it looks, toss it back in the bowl and the dough just gets repressed. Let me reset with another color and we'll finish out the pan. I put the other pan in the oven and now I've loaded the barrel with the plain dough. I'm going to give it its first click. That didn't really extrude anything, so I'm going to give it one more. And I've got a lot coming out right here, so let's see how this works. It looks just fine. The Easter egg is a much bigger design. The holes are much bigger, so you don't want to let these come out too fat. It's pretty easy to do, but as you can see, they're very much a one-click per cookie shape. You want to make sure they're not too big, because then they're going to kind of lose that nifty little egg shape. So you might hold back, make your clicks a little bit light, because some of mine were getting a little big. That one's going to need a click and a tap because my rhythm seems to be off. If your rhythm ever gets off, just click one into the air, and my dog's shaking in the background. Click one into the air, wipe it away, and just start going again. With that, I'm out of dough, but I do have a nice pan full of egg shapes here. Some of them are a little bigger than others, but that's going to be just fine. If you've seen more than one of my videos, you might know that I'm a big fan of using a little bowl of water and a slightly wet fingertip to kind of smooth things out and tap them down or pull together any pieces that you might want a little bit differently. And what I did today was I just used a slightly wet finger to tap down and smooth out half of the eggs, because for those eggshells on the chicks that are hatching out of the eggs, I thought it would be nice to have a little bit smoother surface to work with. My cookies are baked and out of the oven and onto their cooling racks. Make sure that you don't let them sit any longer than about 2, 3, 4 minutes on the cookie sheet or they might stick. The next thing that we're going to do is get started with that buttercream frosting, and of course the first step is going to be to cream the butter. Butter is nicely creamed, so I'm going to start adding my sugar, just a little bit at a time. And if it starts to get too stiff on you, you can start adding your wet ingredients. Really, this is kind of dump everything together and just whip it into a really wonderful frosting. The thing that makes it so special is that we're using heavy whipping cream on top of actual butter. So this is going to be a really tasty recipe that's also really fun to work with. I'm going to tip up here and show you how pretty it is. Has some gorgeous peeking to it. So this is a very nice consistency that will be not as thin as you'd want to spread on a cake, but just thick enough that you can use it to decorate with. So what I'm going to do is get a couple of bowls and get out my gel food coloring again, and we're going to tint this in all sorts of pastel colors. Just like I did with the dough, I'm going to give you one example of how to tint this, and I'm going to go ahead with the blue. This time I don't want to use any big globs of food coloring. I want to use just a little tiny bit because this isn't Christmas where we want bright colors, it's Easter, so we want pastels. So I'm just going to take a tiny, tiny little dab of this blue and drop it on into my bowl here. I'm just sort of going to touch it a little bit, set my toothpick aside, and I really want to start slowly on this because I don't want to end up with too much, because you can't take it out, but you can always add more. So I'm going to get a feel for how this looks. Just sort of swirl it in. It's nice and pastel. So now I'll switch to my spoon and see what we get here. And this you obviously don't want to work with your hands. You want to use a spoon. It's very simple. Just stir it on in. This turned out very, very pastel, so I'm going to add a little bit more. A little bit at a time, just poke it in. Now this is exactly what I was going for, a very pastel kind of robin's egg blue. And that's all there is to tinting the dough. I'm going to finish up my other colors because I'm going to be using 6 of them, I believe, and leaving some of it white. And I'm going to fill up a bunch of piping bags, and we're going to use the little star tips to be adding little stars to things and to be filling the cookies in, and I'll show you how to use your fingertips again to smooth it on out. And when I show you a few basic decorating techniques, you'll be able to look at the photos and figure out for yourself all of the different combinations that I used. I'll just get you through the basics. With my icing all tinted, I put it into decorating bags, and I put them in with number 16 star tips, except for the orange, which I did with a number 3 round. And that's because I'm going to need a nice precise line, because what I'm going to be using the orange for is to do the beaks and the feet on the chicks. So let me show you here how we're going to do that. It's just super simple. Just take your tip and just kind of outline the little beak. It's kind of like a diamond shape, really. And then take a wet finger, I am just such a fan of the wet finger, and just tap it out a little bit. I think next time I'll make this orange a little bit darker for the beaks here, but you get the hint. It is an orange beak. And then I'm just going to draw little feet on my little chick here. Come straight down the leg and give her 3 toes. 1, 2, whoops, 3. Now I have a chickie with feet and a beak. And the other thing that we're going to do to several of these is we're going to add candy eyes. And I get these from the Baker's Kitchen online, and they're just the cutest little things. You could use black dots or, you know, whatever you thought would make a cute eye with icing too, but I really like the way these look. And I just want to use a little dab of icing for this too, so I might just add a little dab. Actually, I'll do yellow because that way it wouldn't show on the background of the chick. So if I put a little dab of yellow here, now I've got a little bit of glue that I can use to get this eye on the chick. So I'm just going to pick this up and just dab the back of it onto a little bit of icing there so there's something to stick it with, and then just give my little chickie here an eye. And there you have it, a little chick, and that's all there is to it. So I'm going to set Miss Chickie aside here and move on to the bunny. And the bunny is just going to take the same kind of thing. I'm going to put a little white icing here to use as glue. And then I'm going to use my white icing to just create a little fluffy kind of star, little fluff on the tail. That's the only decorating we're going to do on the bunnies. Little fluffy bunny tail. That's it. And now I'm going to attach her eye, or his eye. This could be a little dude. Right onto here. And again, icing eyes would be super cute too. I just really love these little tiny eyes. They give everything a lot of character. So there's a little bunny ready to hop off with his little chickie friend there. Okay, chickie and bunny are done. The green we're going to use to finish off the tops of our carrots. And just kind of stripe them on there. I like using the star tip because it gives a nice little, I don't know, vegetation look. It's not so simple as a straight line. You just sort of tip it off. Try to keep your tips clean while you're working. Just sort of up and over. Keep a clean tip. Up and over. There you go. Little vegetation on top of our carrot. The most complicated technique I'm going to show you today is really not that complicated. All we're going to do is draw the bottom of one of the smoothed out eggs, which you could do this on the smoothed out or the egg that just presses as it is. You're just going to draw a little jagged line and an outline to the bottom of the egg to look like an eggshell, and then the top part we're going to do with little stars with the yellow to make it look like a fuzzy little chick. So you just want to outline your eggshell. So I'm going to start in the middle and make just a little triangle here, and then a second triangle to the right, and come down and just outline my cookie. Outline the edge, and finish it off with another triangle on this side. And then you just want to fill this in. Just take your icing and just fill it in, and then we're going to smooth it out with our fingers. Okay, so I've got my icing on. Now just use that damp finger again that I'm so fond of, and smooth it out. Just tap on it. That's all you need to do, is just tap on it a little bit. And it doesn't need to look perfect. It's an eggshell, and eggshells aren't perfectly smooth either. You can pick it up if it's easier to work with that way, so it doesn't quite run away from you. And just smooth it out. And there's our eggshell. Now I'm just going to take my yellow with the star tip and just start tapping in little stars. And just fill this out along the edges until it looks like a complete chick. Now that I've got my fuzzy chick in here, I'm going to go back to my orange, and it still has that nice straight round tip, and I'm going to add a little triangle for a beak. Make sure your tip is clean so that you're starting out exactly where you mean to. You might give it a little start too, because this icing, you should keep it covered if you're not having it in bags, because it tends to dry out pretty quickly and you don't want it to get crusty too fast. So I'm just going to add a little triangle, kind of in the center. And what do you think? I'm going to use my wet finger to sort of tap it out. If it's not as pointy as you want, dab a toothpick in there and just straighten out your edges until they look how you want them to look. That's a little pointier. And now I'm just going to add the eyes straight into this icing while it's wet. So I've already got them picked out, so they're matched up. I'm just going to set the eyes right into the icing. And all of a sudden there's a personality here staring back at me. I don't want to pick this up right now, so I'll show you in the pictures instead because it's still wet, so you want to let it dry. The next technique for the eggs is incredibly simple. We are simply going to frost this and then just smooth it out with our fingers, add a little border of stars, and add some sprinkles to it. So I left this one unsmooth, so I'm just going to fill in the cracks here to give me an even surface. And then I'm going to fill out the entire thing, not going quite to the edge, and then just fill it in, bloop, and then smooth it out. Tap, tap, tap. Now if these were big cutout cookies, you'd probably be using a different kind of icing to flood them, but I find that this works really well on these little cookies that aren't as flat and aren't as big. And buttercream icing tastes so wonderful, and it goes really, really well with this really tasty cream cheese cookie. There, so just flatten it out with your finger. It doesn't need to be perfect because it's going to get covered up by the sprinkles anyway. Actually, they're nonpareils. Well, they're a kind of sprinkle. So the first thing I'm going to do is add those sprinkles while this is still wet, because that's how they'll stick the best. And then we'll add a fancier border that gives it a more finished look. So I just want to tap a few on here. I don't want to go crazy. I want to hide that beautiful robin's egg blue. Okay, just a few sprinkles. And now I'm going to take that same tip and add stars all around the edge just to polish it off. I'm going to take a second to show you one last technique. And all we're going to do is use the 3 divisions of the egg that it naturally presses out with to make a 3-colored cookie. So I'm just going to start at the tip and make it pink. And again, it's just applying this, just kind of following the shape of the cookie. And then, you guessed it, smoothing it out with your finger. Then do that for the other 2 sections. Once your 3 sections are done, add a zigzag pattern in between the 3 colors. With that last technique shown, that's all there is for today's bake. I want to thank you all for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this much as I have. I want to wish you all a happy spring, and I hope you're able to get outside and enjoy some of this wonderful warm weather. I know that's what I'm going to try and do tomorrow when I'm done with all of this. As you can see, there's lots of different ways to get creative with this set. You can decorate the eggs, lots of different ways, and make different colored bunnies or whatever suits your fancy. I have a feeling a lot of you are more creative than I am. I am a cookie disc designer, but I'm not the best cookie decorator. So I hope that you come up with some really cool things, and maybe throw a picture or 2 in the comments here. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. So go ahead, take some inspiration from the different designs that you can see in the photos here, the different ways that I use the different colors to make the eggs really sparkle and pop, And again, as always, happy baking from Impress Bakeware.